Nice to see you. Well, I got plenty of stories from the Lower East Side. Realize, if you're writing a book about my career, you could go wild. When I wrote Without a Badge, I left out most of my time as a cop in the Lower East Side and Harlem and the South Bronx. I mostly concentrated on my time internationally with the DEA undercover, with the smuggling and cartels in Costa Rica. There's nothing in there about my time as sheriff of Passaic County. That hadn't happened yet. That was right after I got shot. I had just come out of the 90-day wonder program, the Valor program. That's not what they call it, that's what I call it. Basically, it's the 90-day undercover narcotics program. It's the test program where they test your ability to go undercover, spot the bad guys, buy drugs, fill out the reports. I was working out of the 2-3 on 102nd Street and 3rd Avenue with the SEU, the Street Enforcement Unit. Now, we were citywide, but I had two supervisors, Bobby Barchese, Robert Barchese, and Frank Bose, B-O-S-E. Now, they were coming out of the 9th Precinct, so they were obsessed with the Lower East Side. And any time that an angle would point me towards buying drugs in the Lower East Side, that's where I was going. Now, back then, you had Operation Pressure Point. That's something the NYPD had come up with to fight the plague of drugs on the Lower East Side. And you didn't have that in Harlem or the South Bronx. So I think that speaks for itself how bad it was. Back then, you could buy drugs on every block, from 14th Street to Houston, from Avenue A to the river. You want me to list every block you could buy drugs on? 11th between A and B. 10th, 9th, 6th between A and B, B and C, 5th between A and B, B and C, all the way to the river. 3rd Street, it was every block, 14th Street by Riverside, by Union Square Park or the river, Tompkins Square over by Washington Square Park, Essex, Mott, Pitt, and Rivington. There was a guy there named Nano. I remember, now this was the beginning of the Crazy Jerry character I had developed. It was for the Lower East Side. I'd go in with my hooded sweaty or whatever, and looking all ornery, and I remember there was a door with a peephole. I'd put the money in the peephole, and they'd pass the drugs out. Now I wouldn't hang around for the bust, because I didn't want to blow my cover. Bobby or someone would go in, and they'd make the bust. So Bobby goes in, and the guy's saying, "Where's your warrant? You don't have no effing warrant." And Bobby says, because of exigent circumstances of the warrant, because they could destroy the drugs, he says, "Here's your fucking warrant." He breaks down the door. I remember the center bar was so strong, it folded right over him. They're taking the door out with him inside the door. Guy was crazy back then. Now, Bobby and Frank wrote a book about that period called Rock Solid, about this individual. Well, there were two individuals. There was Alejandro Lopez, and then I forget the name of the other gentleman. And they were partners, and then they split up. There was Rock and Pony Pack. That was the name of the brand that they'd stamp on the bags of cocaine that they would sell. Now, the nucleus of that operation was 507 East 11th Street. That was between A and B. And the building is a nice building now. It's a 5-story building, but there were vacant lots on both sides, and there were pit bulls, and there was a social club on the lower left where the guys would hang out. And that door, I remember, was so fortified. If you lived in that building, if you were there, you were a part of that operation, or you weren't there. I remember one time, I'm hanging out across the street. It's the middle of winter at like midnight. It's cold. And there are like 30 drug users waiting in a patient fashion until they call us over. And then we make an orderly beeline for the front door. And there's a guy there selling the drugs. You give him the money. There was a big enforcer type next to him. And there was a guy running back, replenishing the drug supply, taking the money to the back. It was like an assembly line. And I'm there, and I'm Crazy Jerry. I'm jumping up and down, and I'm buying 25 bags of drugs. Now, I keep dropping the bags so that the guy, because we have a surveillance camera, we want to get his face on the camera. I keep dropping my bags, and so we can get his face on. He keeps saying in Spanish, come on, man. And back then, you know, I'm a young cop. I'm a sponge. My Spanish got pretty good because I'm picking up the lingo and the jargon. And you have to get into character. You have to have an imagination for this. Because, you know, realize, I don't have my field team down the block, because if I do, they're going to be made in like 2 minutes. So they're like 5 blocks away. You know how long it takes to get 5 blocks if I call them in the Lower East Side? Back in those days, I'm on my own. So yeah, you have to get into the character. And if you look at that team that we had, if you look at the speed that we worked at and the accuracy, the perfection rate that we worked at, yeah, we were energetic and we were enthusiastic and we were gung-ho. And I try to understand. I wake up in the morning, I got to go to that Salvation Army box and find it on the corner, get a hooded sweaty or some jamming pants or a torn up shirt. I go down the block, I get my hair in cornrows, I get a do-rag, I go over to that bus stop, I roll around in the grease. By the time I get home, I haven't slept all night. It's the morning. I drive up to my driveway in Jersey in my cheek and chong mobile with oil dropping down the bottom. My wife is standing there pregnant, Maggie. My next door neighbor is pointing at her carriage saying, "You next, Maggie." She's looking at me all hormonally with tears coming down her eyes. She's crying. I remember she said to me, you know, we were having a discussion recently. We were having a disagreement. She said, "You remember all those times I let you run around the city doing whatever while I was raising the family?" And she was right. And listen, I don't want to say Maggie didn't know, because she was a very bright woman, but I don't think Maggie wanted to accept. Okay, she knew me from the age of 15. First we were friends, and then we became lovers, and then now as newlyweds. And she knew me for 7 years before I became a cop, so she knew my potential, what I was up to. And she knew that I was going out and getting dressed up and buying drugs, but I don't think that she wanted to accept the full extent of the mean streets of the Lower East Side that I was dealing with. Realize, she loses her father at the age of 12 when he's 42. He's working in the driveway, he feels chest pains. They take him to the hospital, and unfortunately he's pronounced dead. So, I don't want to say that she didn't know, but I don't think that she wanted to know. That's why when I got shot, I made sure I was the one who was going to call her. Because I don't want 2 cops going up to the door. They're driving her to the hospital at Jacoby in the Bronx. She doesn't know, am I dead? Am I alive? That's where the ornery energy comes in. I'm grabbing these guys and slamming them, saying, "Get me to a phone." And they don't usually do that, but they're saying, "Listen, we got this guy. He's going to tear up every sheet in the place if we don't get him to a phone soon." And she was already having problems with the pregnancy at that point. We don't have another child for 11 years after that, so figure that one out. Listen, I don't want you to think that I'm crazy. It's just, when a situation arises, it just takes over. It's just, everything else just shuts down. And I had a guy the other day, he was doing a 5-minute documentary type thing. He asked me, "Yeah, you can say it's about truth and justice, but I know it's about something else." I said, "Yeah, it's about the adrenaline. And when I'm out there and I'm chasing after someone, it's about the hunt. And I'm the hunter." Now the most adrenaline, that was on the kidnappings. I was involved in a number of kidnappings. I wasn't kidnapped. I was involved in helping to solve a number of kidnappings. And when you're going in there and you're tracing the phone calls and the victims are being tortured, you want to get them out of there, and it's like a movie where you turn over the hourglass and that sand is running down. But that sand is someone's life. And I always say my bad performance means death. And it happened. Like in the late 80s, early 90s, where I don't want to say you had a bad performance, but the performance got tangled in front of the drug dealers. And unfortunately, Chris Hobian lost his life. So yeah, you have to know where to draw the line. But you also have to play the part. You have to get into it. I'm like a camera, you know, with the autofocus where I'm looking around and then something happens and I just zoom in. And then I won't see them, I won't see you, I won't see nothing. I really can focus. And then it got out of control. Because, you know, you got to get into that character, and then eventually you become that despicable person that you're portraying. And when you're chasing after that cocaine cowboy, then you'll become a cowboy yourself. And how could I not? If I'm hanging out at the local bodega, I'm supposed to be a drug dealer or a drug user, not have a beer at the local bodega or a sip of rum from a bottle. And then, you know, the adrenaline, it's funny because we're chasing after these guys and they're addicted to the drugs. But then we're addicted to the adrenaline. Maggie's father was a coat manufacturer, Weiner Industries. We found this old coat. It was out of style, rust orange, like a shag rug, a parka. And I go down to make a drug buy. And they say, okay, what's the signal going to be, the field team? Because I got them ghosting me on the corner. And I say, I'm going to have them, you know, usually it's you pet your hair, you touch your ear. This is how loose and how crazy we were. I say, I'm going to have them do the Egyptian. They say, what? I say, I'm going to have them do the Egyptian. So I go in, I get the drugs. He really likes my coat. He keeps touching my coat. And I say to him, whoa, whoa, hands off the coat. He says, what? I say, look, only 3 of these coats exist in the entire world. Oprah's got one, I got one, and Merv Griffin's got the last one. He says, okay, give me the money, because, you know, I'd already gotten the drugs. He said, give me the money. I say, hang on, I'm superstitious. Do the Egyptian for me. He says, what? No, come on, man, give me the money. I gave you the drugs. I say, come on, walk with me and do the Egyptian. So he's walking with me, and we're walking, we're doing the Egyptian, and the field team knows it's their turn to move in, so they move in. Like it was something extra. Like we didn't have enough to do. Like it was just, like we were bored. Another time, okay, you never want to front the money. And by front the money, I mean you never want to give them the money without getting the drugs directly from the person who you're giving the money to. Because first of all, it's not going to be as strong a case. But most of the time, you're going to get beat for your money. And then there can be accusations that you took the money, you got to do a lot of paperwork, it's a big headache, you don't want to do it. Well, one time, there was this guy, and he was tearing up the Lower East Side, and Frank and Bobby really wanted to get him. So they told me, give him the money. We had an opportunity, give him the money. I say, no, Bobby, I don't want to do that. And yeah, now I can say my boss told me to do it. I still don't like it. It's on my reputation as a cop. I give him the money, but I take his coat and his brush. Now he goes up to the roof. He goes roof to roof, and he beats me for my money. I say, Bobby, you see that? You see this asshole? He took me for my money. Yeah, 5, 6, 8 months later, I'm on a buy. I've just bought drugs from this guy, and the backup team is moving in quick because some of the backup team has already been made. So they're moving in, and this guy walks past me. I say, hey, look at my face. He says, what, man, I don't know you. I say, look at my face. He says, hey, I don't know you. I know jujitsu. Don't mess with me. I say, oh, you know jujitsu? Well, guess what? I'm a cop. I'm the guy. I still have your coat. Bobby, this is the effing bastard who... I want him arrested for attempted sale of narcotics. And they're getting crazy now. They're pissed at me. Because the vans have already moved in. The backup team has moved in. I just spoiled this bus. I just blew my cover. Do you know how often I blow my cover? Never. I never blew my cover over nothing. I blew my cover over a brush and a jacket and $50. And my pride. Another one, that same building on 5th between A and B. There's a school there. There's an empty lot next to it. You got to climb over a fence to go in. There was a garden apartment. I remember there were 2 doors on the left. On the right was a garden. On the left was where you'd go in. There was a door to buy the drugs. Now back then I'm carrying a Browning 380 BDA with a wood handle. Not at all associated with the police department. They were mostly carrying revolvers at the time. I got my money out. I go to give my money, and the guy pulls out a barber's razor. And he says, you're beat. Give me the money. I know shit. I can't get to my gun in time. I make a beeline for the front door. I turn around. I pull out my weapon. I say, drop the razor. I'll blow your head off. Drop the razor. I'll blow your head off. So he drops the razor. I'm moving in. Now the field team doesn't know where I am. It's been so long. I grab this guy by the jacket. I'm backing him out. I say, you're going to cut me, man? You're going to rob me? I'm backing out the front door. And now I hear, drop your weapon. I turn around. There are 3 revolvers pointing at me. I know what to do. I drop the gun. I let the guy go. I turn around. It turns out it's 3 rookies from my division. But they don't recognize me because they're rookies. Ha! Well, we got it straightened out. We sent the bad guy to prison, but it was out of control. I'll tell you one more. Unfortunately, it has to be the last one, and it's a good one. Now, the FBI, the DEA, and the SEU, my unit, all shared cars. If a car got made by the bad guys in a neighborhood, it would get passed on to another division. Now, the FBI had a car stolen from their parking lot in Queens. It was recovered, and then it was passed on to our division. It was a rental from Jersey plates, and that worked well in the Lower East Side. Now, we had just made a buy at 507 East 11th Street, and we had two bad guys in the back seat. We had the drugs and everything. We're driving a Chevy Impala. We get to around the area, we notice there's a lot of police activity. By the time we get to 10th Street, there's like 10 blue and white cop cars. There's a taxi behind us. They get out. Turns out they're undercover. They're coming after us. Apparently, they had to remove the car from the computers as stolen. We're driving what they think is a stolen car. Now they come to get us. They pull us out. They find my gun. They go crazy. They find the drugs. Now they're saying, get down on the floor, drop your weapons. They're beating the hell out of me. They're beating the hell out of Elsa. She's got a wire on her. It's nearly cutting her throat off. They're slamming her against the car. They're slamming me as hard as they can. We can't say nothing because we're undercover. We don't want to blow our cover. By the time we get to the precinct, now we're telling them who we are. And they're saying they're taking the stance that uniform has priority. And we're saying we want them fired. Their supervisor comes in. Our supervisor comes in. They're saying it's our fault. We're saying it's their fault. In the end, it's just a bunch of clerical bullshit. It's just bullshit. I mean, in the end, it wasn't their fault and it wasn't our fault. It was just one of those situations where a cop ran at the cop and no one knew. Now, my theory back then, or my lack of theory, because, I mean, I'm a young cop. I just want to get into narcotics. I've got a supervisor, Ali. He's the kind of guy, he's the chief of detectives, and he was the undercover lieutenant for downtown operations. And he's the kind of guy, if he told you, go after the guy with the brown coat and buy drugs, and you buy drugs from the guy next to him, he'd go nuts. So imagine, I'm telling him, oh, this guy's speeding, or that guy's urinating in public. It just wouldn't happen. And back then, look, I was a young cop. I was doing what I was told. I didn't have a degree in I didn't have a degree in government from the Kennedy School at Harvard. Now my theory, okay, there's a book. There's a theory called broken window theory. I just came from a community board meeting as sheriff of Passaic County. And yeah, they're worried about drugs, they're complaining about prostitution, but they're saying, we can't come out of our houses. They're doing drugs, but they're drinking in public, they're creating a nuisance, they're creating a disturbance, they're drinking, they're speeding. I can't send my kids across the street, they're not obeying the traffic signals. Yeah, I can't send them to school, they're selling drugs in front of the school. Now, what broken window theory says is, you gotta go after the foundations. You gotta go after the quality of life issues so that they don't feel like they own the neighborhood. That's how the Lower East Side used to be, where they were held captive in their home. They were held prisoner in that neighborhood under siege. Now, I don't want to say we didn't do no good back then, but they were going after just the drugs, and they were happy if they could say, look, we got 9,000 drug busts this week. We did a study. If you took a 5-year block from the early 90s in Atlanta or the Lower East Side or Boston, the numbers are about the same. Because crime is also cyclical. And we looked at a number of factors, including birth rate and social and economic, political factors. But I don't want to say we didn't do no good. And also, I mean, the guy that I was drinking that beer in that bodega, I listened to what that bodega owner was saying. Hey, listen, you know, they're creating a disturbance out front. Oh, women are going to be scared to come in and buy milk for their babies. And back then, I was crazy, Jerry, and I was in the shadows, and I was working at 4 in the morning, and I didn't want anyone to know who I was. And now, I'm Crime Stopper Jerry. And I'm in the public eye, and my life is transparent. Here, you drive in Jersey, that'll help you. But it's still cop work. And I could have retired with a full pension and disability after I got shot. I drove around for like 5 days. It was not for me. This fills a void, you know, and yeah, there's less excitement, but you know, you move on to another stage of your life and you say, this is who I am, this is my new phase in my life. And, you know, when I got shot, or better, when I had to pull out my gun and fire 11 times and unfortunately take the life of Benjamin Clark. Now, I don't wake up in the morning, and I don't think any normal person, I hope no healthy officer, wakes up in the morning saying, oh good, today's the day I'm going to get to shoot someone. But I do wake up saying, I get to be a cop. Oh great, and I get to do cop stuff. And when it happened, you know, by that time, you pulled out your gun a number of times and you've said, this could be a situation where I'm going to have to use it. And you've practiced and you've practiced and you've trained and you've trained. And when that moment comes, a good cop, a real cop, goes towards the action, goes towards the danger, not away from it. And when I got shot, I remember, you know, I had thrown my radio at them at that point. Because I had called everyone. I had called the Marines. No one was coming. And you have a flash of your life and you see your family and all. And that was the one thinking I was doing, was I want to get home to them. And when you get home, you get out of the hospital. And remember, you've been sedated. And you've gone through the commendations and the reports and the citations and the media blitz. And you sit down in a chair and it's like you've run a marathon and everything just goes right out of you onto the floor. And yeah, you want your wife. And you want your family, and you want the security. And now, I'm going home, me and my wife alone. We're going to move the furniture into our newly wood floors. We're settling in together.